I'm Jess,
And I'm Wes,
and we are the
the
Ontario
Ontario
Wildmen.
Wildmen.
On this show, we travel back and revisit the significant moments, the heroes, the villains, the legends, and all things professional wrestling in Ontario, Canada. Wes, we're back. First time ever, we're doing a two-part episode where we come back week after week, and honest to God, I am shocked by the response of episode one, or part one of this episode.
It's been super fantastic, McGorkle. Yeah, super fantastic McGorkle. I think that's the word. You've been keeping me abreast of what the numbers have been, and I'm so excited that the people are listening. People are listening to our older episodes, and let's just keep it rolling. It's fantastic, and I want to thank everybody also for listening in and taking the time out of their busy lives to take an hour or two with us as we talk about the wrestling history of Ontario.
Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled and so grateful and so appreciative of everyone who's just giving us a shot. Me and Wes, like we say it all the time, we just met over Facebook. We are given an opportunity and we're taking it very serious and we're trying to bring a good show month after month. And with Whipper Watson Part 1, I'm so happy to say that on YouTube we've hit, I think it was, last time I checked, it said 99 views after 4 days. That's the highest we've ever got to the number 100 ever. And we're not even talking, and that's just YouTube alone. We're not even talking Spotify and Apple Music and all the other media outlets.
Mm-hmm.
So our number's a lot higher than we think. And I just want to thank everyone for giving us a shot, giving us a chance. We're going to continue today with Whipper Watson Part 2. But first, let's just briefly discuss for anyone who missed out on Part 1. We did talk about from basically his birth in East York to 1959. And Wes, you got some awesome facts there about the 50s and Whipper Watson.
The Whipper Watson and Kaniski, and we'll talk at length about them a little later. Still, two great Canadian wrestling icons. Obviously, both NWA champions. Both could do what they had to do to bring people into the arenas. These guys weren't wrestling in little tiny places either. They were wrestling in big arenas, or the biggest arenas in every town they ever went to, right across North America. We looked at this, and I sent it to you. I still can't believe it. They had over 250 matches against each other over their careers. Now, you have to look at Whipper started in 36, and Gene didn't start until like 54. So there's quite a few years difference from the starting. So still, for those two guys to have that many matches, whether it was singles or tag team matches over their careers, shows that they had longevity, shows that they had skill, and also shows they had box office draw.
Yeah, and from 1956 when they first faced each other, and then that sparked a huge rival for 57 when they had 90 matches against each other. 90 matches in 1957.
90. Let me just get my calculator out here. Hang on a second.
Yeah, you're the business guy.
90 divided by 12. That's 7.5 matches a month against each other. They were going across Canada back and forth. And we're going to get into it a little bit better later. But it's just astounding. 19 matches in 1 year in 1957. I know, like you said, we've covered up to 1959 on the first episode, and we're going from 59 up until his passing. But that's such an astounding fact. We had to bring it up.
Yeah, and like I said, we're going to talk about it a bit later. But I know people, Wes, are anticipating us getting into the whip. We did our wrestling news last week on our first Part 1 episode, So, I mean, there's not really much to report other than Dark Side of the Ring is on tonight as we're recording. It's the Bruiser Bedlam episode. So I can't wait to see that. Apparently
Yes, sir.
it blew up a police station in Canada or something like that.
Pretty, pretty dangerous sounding guy on paper. I don't know if it's all true or hyperbole. It's the wrestling business. It could have been a lot of everything. There is a new picture on our Facebook pages that someone posted from, I think it was from a special show they did in Buffalo in the 90s or the 80s. And Johnny Canine's in that picture along with Reggie Love, Bruce Swayze, Angela Mosca, our good friend Farmer Pete Richard. So yeah, it's unbelievable. We're so excited. Excuse me. To be losing track of what we're talking about.
Yeah, Bruiser Bedlam. Yeah. Jesus. Early onset there, bud, or what? Early onset or what? Oh my God.
Oh man, what? I saw something shiny. Hang on a sec. So yeah, yeah, we're going to
You got to get your Grand River tea for the episode, eh, buddy?
we're gonna probably get into that next episode after we watch a couple of I watch a couple of them also, Dark Side of the Rings. And
Yeah. I can't wait to hear what you think of him.
yeah,
I'm addicted to it. I love it. You know, I've watched every season multiple times already. Anyways, other than that, there's not really much going on. I can't wait to discuss what's going on in the wrestling world next month when we have our episode, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. Wes, do you want to bring up anything before you forget, or should we just go to the commercial and get back into what did you watch?
Here's the commercial.
Be sure to follow the Dynasty Wrestling Podcast Network and all of the participating podcasts on social media. The easiest way to find us is on Twitter. You can follow the network at WrestlePods, and you can find all the individual shows at their Twitter accounts. You can find the Wrestling Nostalgia Show at Wrestle Nostalgia, the Ring-a-Ding-Dong Dandy Podcast at Stampede Pod, and the Wildmen Podcast at Wildmen Podcast. Also search us on Facebook for pages and groups. Participate, interact, join the network, and be a fan. Thank you for your support.
Wes, this week we did something a little different with What Did You Watch? Both of us took the time and checked out all of the new stuff AC posted on the mapleleafwrestling.blogspot.com website. He's also uploaded it to YouTube. This footage is unbelievable. The fact that he got it from reel, like an actual film, to the computer for everyone to see is absolutely fantastic. And I was so thrilled to see it all. And for me, watching a guy who was born in '88 not being able to see any of that stuff, going back and watching '60s wrestling was pretty damn cool.
It was ridiculously cool, even for me. I take it that some of it must be from some of it's probably from the later '60s. I'm not really too sure.
It's 1962, 1964. It says on the website.
But the Sheik was in all matches, and he wasn't wrestling in Toronto then.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. I don't know.
Yeah, so but still, to see the Sheik, and they're not full matches; they're just
little slips and clips.
But there's about how many minutes would you say? I think it's 28 or 38 minutes.
Yeah, I think one video, the one that was uploaded on YouTube September 27th, 2021, was titled 1964, and okay. I think that's the 30 minute one. And like you see, like apparently Bulldog Brower, you notice Sweet Daddy Siki,
yeah.
Like the Sheik, like you said, it was cool for me to see the Sheik and then him like praying with the carpet and stuff. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
It was great. Some of the older fans would recognize former ring announcer Jerry Hiff, who was the ring announcer before Norm Kimber, who was famous for our age group or my age group. For modern
wrestling fans, ring announcer wise, would he be like Howard Finkel for Toronto?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make a comparison for people who don't know who he is.
Norm Kimber was basically the voice of the Maple Leaf Gardens ring announcing, and he also did all the TV tapings. So he was very, very famous. And he former resident of Mississauga.
Okay.
Lived just down the street from my father-in-law. So we saw the Sheik, we saw the Beast, John Yashetti was that short little hairy guy with a loincloth on. Pretty sure we saw Valentine.
Yeah, you definitely did.
Duke Noble. I think Bruno was in one of them. Definitely Bulldog Power. I think.
No, I was going to say about Bruno. He does have a 1:36 video up there from Bruno and Buddy Rogers.
Oh,
did you see that?
No.
It's like 1:36 seconds, and it's all snip clips, and it's actually Bruno Sammartino versus Buddy Rogers. It's amazing.
Super cool. And one of the best parts about it, the vantage point of the camera, it's like a TV camera setting, right? It's perfect.
Yeah.
And I think I saw. Have you ever heard of a manager called Gary Hart?
Yes. He's in the WWE, I think, acknowledgement section, I think.
He was really famous. He started wrestling in Detroit, and then he moved on to different areas. He was a great booker, great manager. He was managed Brody for quite some time in Texas. I think I
have him on with Kabuki on a Texas program. I'm not sure who he's with, but I know Gary Hart's on the front.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure when you watch it, there's a guy that's wearing black trunks and leggings, and he's got a purple vest on, and he wrestled with the vest on, covering up his obviously flabby body or whatever, right? But yeah. So cool. That is incredible. We should dissect that to forever, because it's so cool that people would just, even seeing a minute, even like you said, even getting to see the Sheik doing the praying to the east, priceless, absolutely priceless.
Yeah, it was fantastic, man. And like what I noticed too, like, me and my comparing, I like a lot of guys wrestled barefoot.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, so that's kind of, I don't know about that. I guess that's normal back then, but half the guys didn't even wrestle with boots on. And it was literally just two guys in tights. I know they had the midget wrestlers on there.
Yeah.
Did you know who the guys were in the overalls?
They were the Scuffling Hillbillies.
Oh, okay. I don't know anything about them, you know?
They were pretty popular. They played like the hillbilly kind of gimmick.
Yeah, I guess with the overalls.
There was quite a few teams like that, but these guys, they looked like they were the original guys who did tour Toronto at some time. As you can see, they were obviously well-trained, acrobatic even to a certain extent guys. They weren't just like hillbillies in the ring, right?
Yeah.
Guys who could actually wrestle at portraying a gimmick, right?
Yeah, they weren't like the Godwins. You remember the Godwins from the 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you don't.
What?
You don't. What? Yeah, what?
90s?
What? Do you remember what you're supposed?
Do you remember what you're supposed
to say? Oh man. So you didn't see the Bruno and Buddy Rogers clip then?
I must have.
It's on their video. It's on their YouTube video archive page. It's only a minute and 30 seconds long. You have to check it out. It's freaking amazing.
Yeah.
I also had a chance to check out the footage on the website, Maple Leaf blogs, mapleleafwrestling.com, blogspot.com. They actually have Wild Bill Longson versus Whipper Watson on the website. And I watched it, and it's kind of ironic that I got to watch like a 2-minute little clip of that when we literally just talked about them last week's episode.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that things have come full around.
I was negligent in looking for that. Excuse me.
No, it's okay. Whatever. You only knew about the thing. You were dissecting the 30-minute video. But it's, I mean, He's got other things on there. I have to check it out. I think I saw Angelo Mosca versus like Sweet Hansen on there too.
Okay.
It's on their video archive page. But I just want to thank the Maple Leaf Wrestling website family for the availability of this free access to the old school matches. If anybody wants to check it out, any of this out at all, the website is mapleleafwrestling.blogspot.com. Just look up Maple Leaf Wrestling, and then you'll see the Maple Leaf Wrestling video archive page, and that's where all these videos can be found. If you're a fan of the old Maple Leaf Wrestling era and want to check like, more clippings out and learn more about the history of just Maple Leaf Wrestling, they have an awesome Facebook group me and Wes are a part of, Maple Leaf Wrestling Archive. And on Twitter, always has amazing content at Maple Leaf Rest. That's Maple Leaf WREST. The most important thing, one of the most important things, if you want to ask a question about Ontario wrestling or a general wrestling question for Wes and I, if you're an independent wrestler from Ontario and have a match you want us to watch or talk about on the show, or if you're just a fan who wants to watch if you want us just to watch one of your favorite matches, contact Wes or myself on Twitter at Wildmen Podcast. That's WILDMEN Podcast. We have 2 Facebook groups, Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past and the Wildman Tribute page. We have an email, Wes and Jesse Wildman1 at hotmail.com. That's Wes and Jesse, JESSE, Wildman1 at hotmail.com. With all that said, we know everybody is here for one reason and one reason only. So, Wes, let's hear that Gene Kiniski impersonation to go into commercial, bud.
You know, Jesse, I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to be talking about Grand River Tea and their Dropkick Yopon product. It's one of the best. And as usual, Jesse, your beard looks awesome.
I knew you were attracted to me.
Grand River Tea is proud to be sponsoring the Ontario Wildmen Wrestling Podcast, produced by Dave Dynasty Podcast Network, with Wes and Jess providing the Ontario wrestling historical content. Grand River Tea is providing their tea of choice, Dropkick Yopon. An ancient plant grown wild in the southern United States, Yopon is the only caffeinated plant native to North America. It has been used by Native Americans and early settlers in North America for decades. It's organic, sustainably wild, harvested, and hand-picked, and is only touched while growing by sunshine and rain. Dropkick Yopon is a medium roast tea that has amazing aroma of maple and a beautiful golden color when brewed either cold or hot. Here at Grand River Tea, we take our sourcing seriously, and we want to reduce our carbon footprint and make our teas as sustainable as possible. All our loose leaf teas are gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, and have no sugar. So put your kettle on and enjoy some Grand River Tea. All right, we're back with Whipper Watson, 1960 to 1969. And then we're going to be delving into this particular part of his career as it was winding down, some would say otherwise. But he started in 1960 as the Canadian Open Tag Team Champions with Ilio DiPaolo, and they continued to feud with who other else but Mr. Kiniski himself and another great star, Don Leo Jonathan, which would have been crazy to see. They were determined to, both the heels were determined to win the titles off of Watson and DiPaolo, and DLJ, which we like to shorten him down to, although he was 6'5" or something, so no shortening him. Even teamed with the likes of Fritz von Erich to try to rip the titles away from the Maple Leaf Wrestling fan favorites. There's only one team that could dethrone them, and that was Ivan and Karol Kalmikoff, who started a huge rivalry with them across Ontario. And even though the success of the tag team ranks kept Watson busy, we know Whipper was still being booked as a single star, facing Gene Kiniski in 1960 25 times. So he's not only defending tag team championship belts across Canada, he's wrestling Kiniski in singles. It was the top drawing match at the MLG that year with 10,000 people in attendance, with wrestling fans witnessing the Canadian versus Canadian rivalry everywhere and anywhere, like Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Regina, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, probably Victoria also. Whipper also had another big rivalry in 1960 with Pat O'Connor, who, again, another National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Champion at one time. They faced each other multiple times in 1960, and it wasn't just in St. Louis or Toronto. No. Chicago, LA, St. Louis. And he even teamed in St. Louis with his former foe, who he won the title belt from in 46 or 47, Bill Longson, and they faced each other across Canada 3 to 4 times. So, this is 1 year. This is 1960, Jesse. The guy was still huge. And we're showing names for who he was fighting. So he was fighting the top of the top at the time also.
Yeah. Would you consider Whipper Watson and Gene Kiniski the greatest Canadian versus Canadian rival in professional wrestling, like, of all time?
We don't even have to ask the question. Anybody who would know, they go hand in hand. They just go. It could be like, I'm trying to think of something.
Well, it's like you got like Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. You got Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. You got Von Robert versus Whipper Watson. You got Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega. You got Roddy Piper versus Bret Hart. I mean, there's a lot, right, that you could really look at if you really want to break it down.
We could say Steamboat and Flair, who had fantastic matches, great rivalry, but I doubt that they had the career that these guys had. Like, it's just impossible for them to draw the fans, to hold belts all the time, defend them all over the place, and work so hard. These guys did.
I mean, debatable with Ric Flair, I guess.
Well, you're going to put Ric Flair a little higher than Steamboat, but I'm talking about the feud. Yeah, obviously they're not Canadian either.
Well, like, what about Canadian versus Canadian only?
No one.
Toronto versus Montreal. You know what I mean?
Nobody comes close, Jesse. Nobody comes close.
For fans who don't know who Pat O'Connor is, what would you say about Pat O'Connor? I know he was in the NWA Hall of Fame in 2011. He held the Toronto belt, the British Empire title, and the Canadian Open Tag Team Championships with, which is funny, Whipper Watson.
Yeah, Pat O'Connor is a New Zealand guy, came here, made probably a fortune wrestling. National Wrestling Alliance heavyweight champion. I don't have the stat in front of me how long it was. I should have got it. Still, he was good enough to hold the belt for a few years. Mm-hmm. He worked everywhere. He worked little tank towns. He worked big places. He wrestled against Gagne. He wrestled against Whipper, Kiniski. He worked everywhere, and he held massive titles. Ended up being really based in the St. Louis area, and I think he was a part owner for quite some time. He was a matchmaker there and the special referee kind of thing. A long career, and he traveled a lot too in Europe. I'm sure defending the NWA heavyweight championship belt.
Yeah, it's amazing though that Whipper was still in high demand, and obviously he's considered a top Canadian draw across the nation to any promoter, no matter where you go. And like with Whipper Watson showing no signs of slowing down, and he didn't in 1961. Top opponents again, like you were saying earlier, and Toronto's biggest wrestling star were Buddy Rogers, Lou Thez, Pat O'Connor, Gorgeous George, Prince Maivia, the Black Terror. I mean, the list could go on and on. Whipper Watson just continued his single stardom, even going out west against his arch rival, once again, Gene Kiniski, doing a quick British Empire title change. And when I say that, I mean, on Friday night, he lost the title, and on Sunday, he won it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But that was common back in then.
It was. They wanted to make, in the home area, they wanted to leave the fans happy, right?
Yeah, exactly. The 3 title changes in 3 days. You know what I mean? In August of 1961. In the fall of 1961, Whipper Watson would once again find him a tag team gold opportunity and catching in with a familiar friend, Roy McClarty, beating familiar Maple Leaf Wrestling foes, the Kalmakovs. Then in December of 1961, he would claim the International Tag Team Championships with Yukon Eric when they beat the Tolos brothers. Wes, let's just stop for a sec. I think I want to explain to the listeners who aren't from Canada. When we say out west, we mean British Columbia, Alberta,
Correct.
and now we're talking about like the Maritimes. Now,
If we say down east, we're talking about the former areas where Emile Dupre promoted, and the Cormiers, who were the Cormiers were promoters.
Today, Junior.
So yeah, Roy McClarty was a mainstay out west, and he had a brother, Don McClarty, who was ended up being one of the referees out there. They weren't related, but I think
he's Canadian too. He's born in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, his daughter's a member of our Facebook groups, and the Tolos. Yeah, Kelly, her name is.
Hello, Kelly. Hopefully, thank you for supporting the show.
Yeah. And the Tolos brothers, we don't see anything about them. John and Chris from Hamilton, mega stars right across North America also.
Yeah, and Yukon Eric, you know me and the sad stories in wrestling. I think Yukon Eric is probably the saddest story, one of the saddest stories in wrestling. I mean, the guy marries a fan, has a family, and then comes home with a note on the table with the kids gone and everything, and then, you know, he commits suicide I think he committed suicide at the church that he got married at with the girl too.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but again, regardless of the sad story, Yukon Eric was a huge name in the 60s. Huge name.
He started out with Frank Tanya. I think he was one of Frank's boys, probably trained by Watson or one of the Frank's guys. Ron Eric was probably under some sort of a quote booking contract with Frank.
Yeah.
Just like how Andre was with Vince McMahon Sr., right?
But Wes, I got it like 1961. Okay, before we continue into the next year. 1936, he went overseas. Whipper Watson is he, pronouns. 1936 and 1931, that's 25 years in the business already. You know what I mean? Already 25 years in. And it's not like it was now. It's there every single night, every single day.
You figure there was planes in the 50s and the 40s, but these guys were not like hopping on supersonic jets. They were no internet, no nothing, booking. They're in the phone booth somewhere, and they're going, Canadian Airlines, I need you to get me to Regina. And then they're going to phone another airlines to go from Regina to Calgary because there's a snowstorm or whatever. They can't drive. And these guys they were travel crazy. I don't know how they did it. I really don't. Some of the stories that you read in different books, like Lou Thesz's book and some other books, just incredible, terrible, terrible traveling stories. And lots of guys died on the road too, eh? Like tons of guys died on the road, sadly. So yeah, this is not, on the internet booking their next month of flights. This is guys, with 2 weeks notice maybe sometimes. I need to get back to Vancouver. I need to get to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Just crazy, crazy times.
Yeah, it's like they would fly out west to Vancouver and literally drive all the way back to Toronto, just doing wrestling shows all the way home.
Exactly.
So 1962 saw Whipper Watson tag a lot more than usual, starting the year losing the international tag team titles back to the Tolos brothers, but then winning the Canadian Open tag team titles with Bill Solowick. Tell me I said that right. Yeah, whatever. Davin's going to throw that one at me.
Yeah.
And losing the Pacific Coast titles all within the month of January. Across each province, Whipper would go and team with top local guys against top heels. In Vancouver, Whipper would team with Mr. Clean or Bearcat Wright against Gene Kiniski and other heels. Again with the Kiniski, so obviously it just once again proves that their careers are intertwined.
Yeah.
In Ontario, with Billy Red Leons, tell me I said that right, against Sweet Daddy Siki and one of my personal favorites, Bulldog Brower. Or against another famous tag team, obviously the Tolos brothers, or the Kalmakoffs, sorry. In May of 1962, Whipper Watson was booked with future legend and WWE Hall of Famer, a young Bruno Sammartino. Together, the two babyface teamed up against the team of Bulldog Brower and Sweet Daddy Siki, winning the NWA International Tag Team titles in Toronto. And I'll talk about that, witnessing that. This rival would last the rest of 1962, and as when Bruno and the Whip teamed, Sweet Daddy and Bulldog were not far behind. The remaining of 1962 found Whipper Watson mostly staying in Canada, winning and losing tag team gold across Canada. Even once again capturing the Pacific Coast Tag Team title with Bearcat Wright. In late 1962, Watson would lose the British Empire title in Calgary to fellow Ontario wrestler Mike Sharp. Okay, Wes, you gotta tell me who Mr. Clean is.
You threw a whole pile of names there.
Yeah, so let's recap a lot, because I like to, we like to make sure that anyone listening can learn, and if you don't know a name, hopefully we teach you about the name. So let's start with Mr. Clean.
Well, there was a couple of Mr. Cleans. I'm not too sure if this was a guy named Ernie Bemis or something like that.
I think that's the one I found.
Yeah. Okay. So he was a big guy, bald head, had an earring like the Mr. Clean cleaning product guy. Wore white long pants and a white shirt.
Yeah.
As far as I understand, yeah, whatever kind of career. Bearcat Wright on a different story completely. Famous, awesome colored star. Great guy.
Super baby face. Super baby.
Wrestled everywhere, too. And one of the cool things about Bearcat Wright was in the 70s, one of the After magazines put out a page on, oh my God, Bearcat Wright is dead.
What?
And he wasn't. They completely blew it. They said he died of sickle cell anemia, whatever that is. Yeah, he wasn't. That's
what's cool about Bearcat Wright too is that in 2017 he went into the WWE Hall of Fame. So there you go.
Yeah. He was I never saw him. I've seen him on tape. I think from Texas or something. Big star, kind of stereotypical, but still he had enough talent to hold some kind of minor titles, and he traveled everywhere too. Another guy who traveled everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Red Lions, for people who are even tiny bit older than you, they remember him as the mouthpiece when Vince took over Toronto, and Don't You Dare Miss It and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, really?
He had a fantastic career. Hamilton area guy, really famous, great star, wrestled everywhere also. He wrestled everywhere. He toured a lot. Complete babyface. I thought he was great. I met him a couple times as he has advanced in age. Really nice guy. Loved talking the business. And he didn't travel as much. He wasn't as big of a star, but he was certainly huge here in Ontario. Sweet Daddy Siki, what can you say? I mean, watch the documentary, like, holy smokes, and you get to see the top of my head.
Dude, that documentary was amazing. And it just goes to show you, Sweet Daddy Siki was so popular. I didn't even know my aunt watched wrestling, and she was commenting on our stuff the other day because she remembers Whipper Watson. So it's like, he was that famous, and he was huge in Ontario. He worked for the Bearman, no? Sweet Daddy Siki?
He worked for the Bearman for, like, in the late 60s, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he also worked for Dave right up until he stopped wrestling, probably '86. He was a huge star. Another guy who wrestled everywhere, a colored guy who, as a dark-haired wrestler, was good. When he got the gimmick of dyeing his hair blonde, blew it
Yeah,
out of the water. Blew it
yeah.
right out of the water. There was nothing compared to Sweet Daddy Zeke in the day. Arrogant. He could talk. He could wrestle. He could fly. He did massive, awesome drop kicks. He was a really good star. Not that big of a guy, but and I loved. He was a favorite, whether he was a heel or a bad guy or a good
Would
guy.
he? Would you compare him to like a Coco Beware?
No comparison whatsoever.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
He okay. Coco Beware had awesome drop kicks, but he was like 5'8",
I'm talking like, the energy
and tons of energy. Yeah, lots of energy in his matches, and he could sell, and he did his job.
I mean, it would have been, yeah, definitely. It would have been pretty cool to see Whipper Watson and Bruno Sammartino team too. That would have been something, man.
I'm not a big fan of Bruno at
Of
all.
course you're not. You don't like fucking Hulk Hogan.
Uh, I give Bruno his due when it comes to his passion in the ring that he showed and his
Hmm.
commitment, what he did. As a wrestler, it just didn't do anything for me much at all. I like his matches. I love seeing him go against Koloff or Superstar Billy Graham or whoever, right? Seeing these two guys team in Toronto would have been obviously fantastic. Bruno was blackballed out of New York City, or the WWF at the time. Frank gave him a chance, and that's probably why they won the title belts that you had mentioned, because Frank needed to keep Bruno in a paycheck, and it's well documented in many websites and in Bruno's books that Frank Tunney in the early '60s looked after Bruno like no other.
Yeah. I found an amazing article on slamwrestling.net by Greg Oliver about Bruno Sammartino and the significance to Toronto
Yeah,
and how he became a superstar over here before the US.
yep,
It's
he was.
funny, eh? It's like Jimi Hendrix. He got popular in Europe before the States.
That's right. He Bob Marley too.
Yeah.
Um, Bruno was big in the States, but then he got blackballed, and for whatever reason, I can't see why they would have, but obviously it was a Buddy Rogers thing, I imagine. And they could have Bruno could have been nothing. He could have not made it. He could have quit, and would have never been heard of again. Um,
Exactly.
you asked about Mike Sharp. Mike Sharp. This was Mike Sharp's senior, not Mike Sharp Jr. Ben and Mike Sharp were two Hamilton guys, big guys, big guys, probably 6'4", 6'5", 260, 280. I never saw them. I don't think I've ever even seen them on tape, but I've seen lots of pictures of them. They were huge, and they main evented in Japan quite a bit, which was pretty cool for back in the time period.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Um, Wes, do you think by 1962 Whipper Watson's role started to change? Do you notice like a young San Martino? You know what I mean? Like younger guys are coming in, and Whipper started tagging with a lot of guys. Or do you think it was more of a, hey Whipper, like you're an attraction, so let's put you in 3-man tags so we can get more stars into on the card. You know what I'm getting at? Like
I,
at this point
I,
in his career,
yeah,
like
I
what
agree
are
with
you
you
doing with him?
100%. It doesn't seem, because what we're going to talk about, it doesn't seem to make sense. But the only thing I can suggest at this time was he was known for Whipper is known for having a bad back, and I imagine this might have been one of his time periods where he needed to quote, take it a little easy. Your points are well taken. Nothing better to get someone over than tagging them with a famous star, right? Like
Exactly.
in Bruno's case, right?
They do it still in WWE. Look what they did with Matt Riddle. I know you don't know who that is, but
Yeah.
for modern wrestling fans, Matt Riddle tagged with Randy Orton. You know what I mean? Young stars tag with veterans all the freaking time.
Well, there was a Riddler in Batman. What? Go
What?
ahead. Knock yourself out.
Riddler and Batman.
Yep.
Oh my
Riddle,
God.
Riddler, whatever, Batman, Robin.
Okay, you know who the Riddler is to me? Jim Carrey.
Yes, I know.
Yeah,
I saw that.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Oh, you saw that?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't know. Sometimes you shit on the 90s, so.
yeah.
Okay, let's move on. 1963. It was an interesting time in pro wrestling. The WWF would separate from the NWA, becoming an independent promotion and getting the WWF belt on Bruno Sammartino, which there's a lot of controversy about, as probably many wrestling fans know, which would be the birth of the Vince McMahon Sr. and Sammartino partnership. But in Canada, only one name mattered. The only name that mattered was the Ontario hero, Whipper Watson. The Whip would continue to travel across Canada, shoreline to shoreline. Watson would even visit Hawaii twice in 1963. And then in February of 1963, Bruno Sammartino and Whipper Watson would be defeated, losing the international tag team titles to none other than Bulldog Brower and Johnny Valentine. Imagine seeing that title change. Come 1964, Watson would see a lot of familiar foes. The familiars like Buddy Rogers, Bulldog Brower, Don Leo Jonathan, or DLJ. Even teaming out west in Vancouver with Enrique Torres against the Funk brothers, Dory and Terry Funk. With all the matches, it was Hamilton's Johnny Ischetti, aka the Beast, who helped Whipper Watson once again claim the top drawing match in Maple Leaf Gardens for the first time since 1961. Whipper Watson versus the Beast with Martin Angelo drew 11,000 people in Toronto. Wes, let's stop and you want to explain who John Ischetti is?
Yeah, he was a big star also. Another Hamilton guy. His manager Martino Angelo, I think I think he was a French Canadian, but I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe he was from Pittsburgh. I can't remember, but the Beast, we'll call this Johnny Ischetti the Beast. Most fans here know his name because as the 70s rolled in, he stopped being the Beast and he was always ring announced as Johnny Ischetti because people knew him from Hamilton and he was cool with that, right?
Yeah.
He was an awesome foe for Bruno in the Pittsburgh area and all over the WWF. I don't know if you ever watched any ECW.
Yes, I did. I'm a huge ECW fan.
Okay, so then did you ever see any early ECW with a guy named Taz?
Yes.
Okay, so Taz and the Beast are like two brothers. Short, stocky, muscular. Taz was probably maybe a better wrestler than the Beast because I don't think I ever saw the Beast throw any suplexes out of nowhere, which was Taz's forte. He was awesome. I really liked him.
He's a commentator for AEW now.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah, and he has like a little faction going on. He's a mentor over there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's cool to know. I just want to let everybody know at 1964 now. That's where we're at.
Yep.
So we're getting close to where we usually post for Ontario wrestling clippings of the past, our Facebook group. So now we're approaching the era of our wrestling clippings, no?
Yeah, we've got a lot from the 40s and the 50s, but we've got the most from the 60s, and we've got tons and tons of Whipper clippings, especially when he was quote starting to slow down and he was wrestling in the summer vacation territory and all the big arenas in Ontario. So we've got just Ontario wrestling clippings of the past is exactly what it is. It's not just clippings; it's pictures and posters and all the other things that our group's famous for. But it's laden with Whipper Watson. All I have to do is go in the search bar, type in Whipper Watson, and all sorts of stuff will come up. It'll probably be mind blowing.
Yeah, my collage will come up too. That one I made on the Bristol board with all the clippings.
Nice one.
Yeah, I have to frame that still.
That's super cool.
And
Jesse, you did that before we even started the podcasts.
Yeah, I did.
Because you knew the significance of who Whipper Watson was. And you could probably tell that just by looking and feeling and getting the osmosis off the paper that what was going on with this guy. And that's just super, super cool. Good for you. I'm
Yeah,
proud of
thank
you.
you. Oh, thanks, man. You're gonna make me cry.
Don't cry.
Even though Whipper was busy, by 1965 he had to slow down, because his focus was on something totally different. 1965 brought out something, a whole other side of Whipper Watson. The Whip would step away from the Whip name, although still wrestling, but Billy Watson would step into politics, running for the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada in East York in 1965, but losing the region to Steve Otto by 3,000 votes. So just for anybody outside of Canada who doesn't know how our politics system works, we vote pretty much by region. So, like, the city of Oshawa would have their own elective chair, Whitby would have their own elective chair, Toronto has East York, all that kind of stuff. So it's not like he ran for prime minister. He ran in the federal election,
Yes.
but he ran for the East York territory.
Correct.
Um,
And East York is very famous for other thing too.
What's that?
That's where I was born.
Oh. Yeah, that's why I didn't find a clipping of it. I read online that he promised to quit wrestling if he was elected.
He did.
You know?
Yep. He did.
Really, eh?
It would be kind of like, it would be lying. It would be like lying to the people. You voted me to represent you, and I'm going to Chicago. I'm going to Vancouver for 4 days or 5 days to drive back across Canada, like you said, to hit all the wrestling towns.
Exactly. 1966. Whipper Watson has an impressive 6 title matches against NWA champion Gene Kiniski, as the Whip still provided credibility to the main event of the world title. Although never capturing it, Whipper Watson continued his success in the tag team division, with old foes becoming partners like Johnny Valentine, Bulldog Brower, and Lord Layton. It was once again Whipper claiming the top drawing match in 1966 when he teamed with Lord Layton, facing against the Masked Yankees. 7,500 people got into Maple Leaf Gardens to see the super babyface tag team of Layton and the Whip take on the Super Heels. Wes, the Masked Yankees, got anything on them?
Yeah, it was 2 guys.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think it was Moose Evans and Bob Stanley, and I don't know much else about them other than under the masks, they became like really famous here for a long time, maybe 2 or 3 years. I think they also wrestled as Yankee number 1 and Yankee number 2, and there was a third Yankee number 3 when they obviously would have brought someone else in to go under the hood. It was something that we'll talk about a little later, or very, very soon. These guys worked the whole Ontario circuit, and we're bringing it down now in where Whipper's staying at home more, and we'll let you bring in the next part of 1966.
Well, before we go on too, I want to note something with you. I noticed that the attendance is dropping in the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So come 1965, attendance is going down, and that's what I noticed, to be honest, with every match in Toronto. The attendance was down. Do you know anything about why the attendance would be down? Just boredom, or new star needed, or
they needed someone to come in, and we know what the answer is. It was not Whip. And no offense against Whipper, 1966, he is like 49 years old. Not over the hill, but he's pushing it, right? And like wrestling does go in cycles, massive popularity, massive in the dumps, up and down, and in Toronto's no different from anywhere else. And if you had the list of all that attendances since Maple Leaf Gardens opened up, you'd see the ebbs and the flows. And the ebbs and the flows here were, lots of people have talked about it. Bulldog Brower said, "Oh, they brought me into Toronto and the crowds went up to 10,000 right away." Or Johnny Valiant said the same thing, but there was only one person who brought it back. Only one, and that was a year or two later. We'll get there in a minute.
Yeah, 1966 was kind of interesting for Whipper Watson in a total other aspect of wrestling. Whipper would partner with Dave McKegney, the Bearman, the Canadian Bearman, the Wildman, whatever you know him as. He would team up with him in the spring of 1966. As Whipper's career was slowing down, his appearances outside of his home territory were also kind of slowing down. So he wasn't going to St. Louis and all that like he was in the 40s and the 50s.
That's right.
Whipper and Dave would focus on the late spring, summer, and early fall areas of Ontario. Together, Dave and Whipper had the blessing of Frank Tunney, the main responsible for Whipper's ultimate success, which you can't really deny. Frank Tunney is responsible for Whipper Watson.
Correct.
So there was some stipulations put in place, and it was don't promote too close to the cash cow of Maple Leaf Gardens. The team of Dave and Whipper Watson worked throughout the summer in the summer vacation towns that had an empty hockey arena. Although Dave had a few regular guys he could count on to fill out the cards like Ron Donner and Willie Farkas, most of the boys on these cards were booked through Frank, and as long as the boys were getting a payday and Frank was making his booking fees, everyone went home happy. Some of the stars who worked for this unlikely tandem were Siki, Leons, the Beast, Siki's protege, Duke Noble, Ladd, the masked Yankees, who we just talked about, number one foes of Whipper in the Ontario circuit for a few summers, Hans Schmidt, Bulldog Brower, Rocky Johnson, Fabulous Moolah, all toured through the area in the summer of 67. Also added attractions were Dave's famous wrestling bear, Terrible Ted. Young Phil Watson also made his debut in 1967 as a replacement for his older brother John, who had wrestled previously as Whipper Jr., but was sidelined after an injury and retired. As far as we know, this partnership lasted only until 1968. Wes, you're the Bearman historian. Everybody wants to learn the Bearman in Ontario always goes to you. Even Rob Hugo went to you. So what's your outtake on Whipper Watson and Dave's partnership here?
Well, I didn't believe it when I started delving into it, but as I found more and more results in newspapers doing online research, I spoke with Roger Baker, who was a famous Toronto photographer, many articles in the magazines, great guy, has given tons and tons of pictures to AC for his books and his website. He said that they did work as a partner. He didn't know much about their partnership, but he did say they worked as partners. It's an odd pairing, but on the same note, you got to look at it. We're slowing down. Dave's coming up. You know that Whipper going into Pickering or Whipper going into Bowmanville in 1967, he's going to pack the house.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he is 53 years old or something, that's not the point. The point is that they're going to pack the house, right? So they used the Bear, they used Dave, they used Whipper, and like I said, they wrestled against the masked Yankees, whoever they may have been even back then, with a few other guys, and they had 3 or 4 matches on a card, plus the Bear, the wrestling Bear, which is obviously right up your alley. And they did well. I think Dave made enough money those few years for himself to move into the 70s and having the fantastic promoting career that he had. And I think Whipper probably was happy to pad his pocket and not be away from home as much.
What do you think of like the summer towns? Like when we say the summer vacation towns, like to me a vacation town would be Beaverton. You know what I mean? A vacation town to me would be the Muskokas.
Yeah, and they went everywhere from Kingston, Ontario, in the east of the province, to like 400 miles away in Goderich or London. They didn't wrestle in London that much, but they did wrestle in London area. We're looking at 400 miles apart, different places, and they were going every night, or at least 6 nights a week, and Whipper was the main attraction, and Whipper and the Bear, and that would bring 1,000 people to a little 1,000-seat arena. I remember going and talking to some people about, I think it was Shelburne, Ontario, and at one time the population would have been probably 1,500, but they had an arena, and in the summer it was empty. And when they booked the wrestling there, they had 200, 300 ringside seats and as many fans as they could fit in the stands. And those stands were probably, because it was a small arena, stands were maybe 10 deep. And so it wasn't like, 2,000 people. They were probably getting packed at 1,000 and at $3 a ticket. That's a pretty good paycheck for that time period. For the
how much do you think Frank Tunney charged for his booking fee?
I have no idea. I wish.
You gotta think it's like 5-10%.
I don't think it was 10. I think it was 5 or less, because it's got to be equitable, right? It's got to be equitable. Frank has to, even if it's only $10, but if he drops his guy out 40 times in the summer, that's $400, and $400 in 1967 was a pile of money for not doing anything other than give him a booking sheet to some of his guys.
That's wild, man. Around 1967, the Ontario wrestling scene was completely slowing down, as we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
With Whipper getting older, his time in the ring started to slow down. In 1967, he only left Ontario once, and that was to New Brunswick to face his arch rival Gene Kiniski for the NWA title. Although the scene was slowing down, although the crowds were down, Whipper still drew the largest crowd in Maple Leaf Gardens when Ontario legend teamed with Lord Layton to take on Tiger Jeet Singh and Fred Atkins with 7,500. Again, you see the 7,500, Wes.
That's brutal for Maple Leaf Gardens. That's just brutal. I mean, on a
17,000 seater, I think, right?
Yeah, on a packed night, they squeezed 18, I think, in once, or like 17 and change for some great cards. The 7,500 it's like a waste of time. But I mean, it wasn't, but still, it's like a waste of time compared to with the glory days, right? That it happened before, and the glory days that were about to come. Tiger Jeet Singh.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think of Tiger Jeet and Fred Atkins as a tag team?
Pretty brutal. Like that's two guys you don't want to get in the ring with. Fred Atkins was like a rock. Australian guy, came here, trained lots of people. Physical, he looked like the kind of guy that would look at you and he could break your bones. He was a longtime referee in Toronto. He was a fitness instructor for Toronto Maple Leafs and the Buffalo Sabres. He was that well conditioned. He trained Tiger Jeet Singh at his home in Crystal Beach, Ontario, which is down near Fort Erie, and he turned Tiger Jeet Singh into a star.
Really, eh?
Yeah, and them teaming up, because at this time Fred Atkins was his manager, so he was teaming up with another guy who Fred Atkins teamed with and managed was Giant Baba when he made his first tour of North America.
Yeah, Giant Baba would have been sick to see.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome. Yeah, Fred Atkins held 3 Toronto titles in Toronto. He held the British Empire title, the Canadian Open tag team titles, and he was a 4-time international tag team champion, 3 times with Professor Hero.
Yep, I have stuff here I found that I thought I'd sent you already, but I haven't, obviously. Whipper and Atkins trading the title back and forth in the 40s in Simcoe, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
They had a summer wrestling season, and that was I remember seeing those clippings. I was like, holy jeez. And Fred Atkins, is the picture in the clipping is his head, and he's got the crown on turned sideways. He's got this awesome smirk on his face, right? Just for publicity, showing that, Whipper's not the man I am.
Was Tiger Jeet Singh the guy who ran the World Cup of Wrestling in the 70s?
We don't. I don't know. I don't know if he did. I don't think he did.
No, I forget. I have the ticket stub and the results.
Yeah.
I just forget who
He,
ran it.
he
You
it
know
was
what?
it was
Where's my
pretty,
goddamn phone?
it was pretty interesting because they came in only for one show, and they did a show here. I think they did a show in somewhere in the middle of Canada, and then they did a show in Vancouver, and it was all right. They used a lot of foreign stars from
Yeah.
Pakistan and India and Thailand. I think there was only two or three really big names. Um,
I can't think of who it was,
famous
and I
British
can't
guy.
find it.
Famous British guy was on the card. Terry York.
It's in our Facebook group if
Yeah,
anybody wants to see it. I have just Google World Cup of Wrestling. I have the year,
yeah.
and I have everything that you would want to know and learn about. It actually would probably make a cool friggin' topic one day too. Here it is, the clipping. Now you can see the clipping I have on the camera.
Yeah.
One day we're gonna figure out how to show our audience the clippings that we show each other on the show.
That's
Yeah.
gonna be great. We can
Yeah,
do.
so here it says Tiger Jeet Singh, Dara Singh, Danny Lynch, Terry O'Neill, Pat Roach. A lot of just like people from everywhere across the world just got together on a show. And Frank only let him run because of the connections, right?
Yep.
Anyways, we're getting sidetracked. By 1968, Whipper was well established worldwide. Can't deny that, right, Wes?
Without a doubt. Yep.
A ring veteran of 32 years and a 51-year-old man, Watson worked with young talent like Dewey Robinson at the beginning of the year, mostly in tag matches. Losing to the Sheik in April of '68, Watson continued his career down the tag team ranks, teaming with rival-turned-friend and ally Bulldog Brower, teaming together a total of 20 times in 1968. Although being a tag team regular at this point in time in his career, Whipper had time for singles competition. He left the province of Ontario only 5 times in 1968. June 12th and July 12th, he went to Halifax to face the Assassin, and on September 7th, Whipper went to St. Louis to face Bill Watts, and on November 11th in Montreal against Brute Martin. I'm sure it's Martine, but whatever. And once again, Whipper returned to Montreal to face Ivan Koloff. Wes, lots of names there to talk about, bud. Let's start with the Assassin, because his rival with the Assassin was huge.
We think that the Assassin was the same Assassin that was in Ontario, and the same Assassin that was in Vancouver, and it was actually Guy Mitchell, who was a Hamilton guy. Turned out to be, in the end, Jerry Valiant, one of the Valiant brothers. Massive star, wrestled everywhere, long career, and a ton of aliases, a ton. The Masked Strangler for the WWA. He wrestled as Guy Mitchell when he was unmasked here by the Sheik in Toronto also. We're all assuming that this is the same Assassin.
Yeah.
Not the Assassins, obviously, from the Georgia areas in the 70s. Our Canadian Assassin, right?
Yeah, the Canadian version of the Assassin.
We don't really have to say too much about Bill Watts. He was a big star at the WWF in the early 60s.
Jim Ross's main guy.
A wrestler's wrestler.
WCW booker.
Marvelous promoter, marvelous brain. I liked him. I liked him a lot in the UWF or whatever it was when he was in the Mid-South.
Yeah, that's when JR worked for him.
Yeah, never saw him live, but I liked him. I liked everything he did. Brute Martin, I think, was one of the Cormier brothers, or it might be Frenchie Martin. I'm not sure. Obviously, Ivan Koloff is Ivan Koloff. He was starting out back then in Montreal, so he would have obviously taken a massive push by wrestling Whipper Billy Watson.
And cool little note of Ivan Koloff, he was the first Canadian wrestler to ever hold the WWF title.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool that for Vince Sr., he was the first Canadian to hold that title.
He was, I loved Ivan Koloff. Everything he did, I loved. Not just because he was Canadian, but he was great. He did this move in the 80s where he got the jobber in the corner. He climbed up the ropes, holding the jobber facing the ring. So the jobber's face was facing the ring, and he drive his knee into the back of his neck, and he jumped down off the turnbuckle, driving the guy's chest, face, and neck into the mat with his knee. It was a devastating move. We were talking about suspension of disbelief last. Oh man, I can remember watching, and I knew, but I can remember watching. Go, oh my God, he's gonna kill this kid, right? But they did it. It was so cool. Great move.
This time, do you notice that, like, when we hit this year, 68, Watson is really slowing down. He's barely leaving Ontario.
Yes.
So you got to think, like, the travel's too much, you know what I mean? He's taking more maybe of a backseat role, because he still has a say in St. Louis by this time, I'm sure.
Yeah, he has a say in St. Louis, and he has a say in Toronto. Like that's why he was put with Dewey. Dewey was to be the new star here, and Dewey Robertson ended up being a star, but I don't think he got as big as they wanted him to be.
Yeah, he ended up being the missing link, right, from WWF.
Yeah.
So, a Canadian icon.
Mm-hmm.
By 1969, Whipper Watson was an absolute legend in Maple Leaf Gardens. He was the superhero of all superheroes. Worldwide fame would bring him out of the province of Ontario as an attraction. In February of 1969, Whipper headed to his home away from home, St. Louis. First, he was a special guest referee for a match between his arch nemesis, Gene Kiniski, against Jack Lanza. Then, in the same month, the Whip teamed with Dory Funk and Eduardo Carpenter to take on Dick the Bruiser, Bob Geigel, and Blackjack Lanza. In March, Whipper Watson once again teamed with Dory Funk to defeat Blackjack Lanza in a handicap match. I mean, Jesus, talk about an attraction in St. Louis, buddy. Teaming with Dory Funk, going against Lanza, our editor and main guy Dave Dynasty's boy Dick the Bruiser.
Yeah. It stands to reason that there's still drawing power, or he would have never got in the main events. So they were also probably putting him in there. I don't know what the results of some of those matches were, but they were probably putting him in there to take a fall for someone getting pushed, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Obviously, Blackjack Lanza was getting pushed in St. Louis at the time, and he was a great star from the Midwest. So, if the new up-and-coming bad guy beats a legend in the ring, hey, he's made, right?
Yeah.
And the business is about not being so arrogant that you're never going to lose, but, putting guys over. It's what it is, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much, you got to build the next generation, right?
Yeah, or your promotion fails, and that's what exactly happened in Detroit.
Yeah, key thing too was Andre the Giant push Hogan, right? So
yeah, it was definitely.
They're huge, right? One thing that is important to touch on about 1969 is that in May 1969, Frank Tunney hosted his 30th anniversary show. Of course, Tunney had to book his number one star of all time, Whipper Watson. Whipper helped Tunney build his enterprise, and now at the 30th anniversary show at Maple Leaf Gardens, all wrestling fans came to see a rematch between Whipper Watson and the Sheik. Watson lost by DQ that night, and you may think that match, Wes, was the top draw that year for Maple Leaf Gardens, but it wasn't. It was the Sheik versus Gene Kiniski, and that drew 15,000 people.
And as we said earlier, the downturn of 7,500 people, it changed when the Sheik came in. He was
2 years
new here. He was uber exciting, crazy, the wildest heel in professional wrestling history. But man, he drew the fans. And I have pictures of Kiniski versus the Sheik, and I love the Sheik. I just loved everything he did.
Is 69 the start, like the rise of the Sheik in Toronto?
Definitely the rise of Toronto. Yeah. So without even blinking, the Sheik drew on a poor day and in his hot streak, he drew 15,000. I mean, whether it was hot, whether it was cold, whether it was a storm, whether the weather was shit, whether it was a strike, whether there was no TTC, it didn't matter. He drew 12, 13, up to 18,000 people, or 17 and change at the Gardens, week after week after week after week.
Yeah. Even though Whipper Watson was always an attraction in St. Louis, he also found himself as a regular in Detroit come 1969. First teaming in July with Mighty Igor and Roger Brown to defeat Bull Curry, Ernie Ladd, and the Stomper, Guy Mitchell. Whipper would return on August 2nd to face Jerry Graham. He traveled back to St. Louis August 15th, 1969 to team with Jack Briscoe and Pat O'Connor to take on Blackjack Lanza, Moose Kolak, and Bobby Heenan. The next day, Whipper would travel back to Detroit to team with Dewey Robinson and Paul Diamond to beat Gordon Nelson, George Cannon, and Pedro Gaudet. The rest of the year, the Whip would face people in Detroit, names like Sheik, Vic Tanner, Bill Terry, Joe Christie, and Bull Curry. That pretty much wraps us up to 1969, Wes. I mean, you got to think, even in the 60s, at 30 years in, Whipper Watson is still a main draw in the States.
Yep, still being able to do what he did best. Obviously he was. I could send you some pictures of what he looked like in '71. He wasn't at peak physical condition, but he could still probably do everything he needed to. He just probably wasn't taking any big bumps or anything. But
I mean, bro, he's being pulled to St. Louis to work with Jack Briscoe, Pat O'Connor in the same match.
Look at the names on that match, like unbelievable, right?
I know.
That still, and that St. Louis was a mecca for having the guys who had wrestled and had been mega stars there, for pulling them back for big shows. Some of the cards I've checked out in St. Louis, they had sometimes 6, 7 former National Wrestling Alliance champions on the cards. It was just the place to be.
You know me, I love St. Louis. I have St. Louis programs. I've even from our buddy Dave in Manitoba, he sent me a bunch of stuff that was from Terry Dart, the St. Louis fan club from the 70s. I mean, it was literally the place to happen. And it's cool, too, that Whipper Watson was really a summer attraction. If you read the thing, like one night in St. Louis and then the next night in Detroit, and then he'd be back in St. Louis, back to Detroit, like all within the summer months. Yeah. So it's like he's really capitalizing on his name within the summer months to make as much money as he can.
That's right. Probably.
Let's review the 1960s, Wes. Who do you think Whipper Watson's top rival is, in your opinion, in 1960?
Without a doubt, same guy.
Gene Kiniski.
No issues. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be, right?
Yep. They were like salt and pepper, or whatever you want to say, right? Rum and Coke or whatever.
Peanut butter jam.
Yep.
Wes and Jess.
Peanut butter and honey for me, but yeah, Wes and Jess. That's right.
You're hilarious. Yeah, no, I would have to agree. You can't. It's hard to argue that it's not Whipper versus Gene Kiniski. Which 1960s match would you want to see the most? Of the Whipper.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a video, I think we briefly talked about it the other night, about Fritz and Whipper wrestling in Buffalo, and Gene gets involved in the match, and Whipper rips his jacket to shreds and blah, 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 right? But it just shows the rivalry that they had. There was chemistry there.
Oh, yeah. It was like Rock and Austin, but 30 years before it.
So there was just so much talent there, and they knew what to do. Talking about writing scripts down for matches and talking, I've gone to some independent wrestling cards where before the matches open up, the guys are in the ring and they're practicing all their moves for the night, and I give them credit because they're doing something they love and they're not making any money. They're never going to get famous or anything. but they're doing something they love, and I give them credit for that. But practicing, you'll never learn. You'll never learn. And Whipper Watson and Gene Kiniski, they had that chemistry that was 100%. It was solid, and they knew exactly what to do. They didn't need any promoter to say, I need you to, maybe all they said, we need you to go 45 minutes, and we need a double DQ.
Yeah, really.
And that was it.
What about his top tag partner? Who do you think his top tag partner of the 60s was? In your opinion, obviously, this is our own opinions.
Yeah. I'd like to think it was probably Lord Layton, but I know he brought Dewey along from about 1968. They teamed a lot together. Dewey.
Yeah, I say Bulldog Brower, in my opinion.
Probably Brower, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably they wrestled the most together, probably.
However, I would love to see the Whipper and Bruno take on Valentine and Kiniski, or Brower and Valentine.
So with Brower a lot, because he was in the area over the 60s for a long time, and his daughter's one of our group members also.
His son is, I think, in the Maple Leaf Archive group too.
Yeah. Brower was an awesome foe because he could play both sides really, really good. So they would team for a while, and then they'd have a mishap, and then it was another 6 months of wrestling each other.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Brower would go away for a few months and come back, and they'd be a tag team again, and the same thing. They did that quite a few times over the years in the 60s. I agree. That's a good one, yeah.
I love Bulldog Brower. You know I'm tracking him with all the mat results I have.
He's
I
awesome. He is so awesome. I just a human fire plug. A human fire hydrant. Just unbelievable, that guy. You see his shoulders? Like, Jesus. And his neck was like...
And the way he moves in the ring.
Yeah, like...
He's like strutting around.
His arm, when he was in shape, his arms actually sat up on top of his muscles at the side of his body. It's like unbelievable.
Exactly. Well, that was the 60s. We're going to take our final commercial break right now. And then when we come back, we're going to wrap up the career of Whipper Watson and talk more about Canadian's greatest professional wrestler of all time.
Indeed.
Support all of the podcasts here on the Dynasty Wrestling Podcast Network. The best way to do that is go to our Pro Wrestling Tees store. It is at ProWrestlingTees.com/TheDaveDynasty. There you will find all of the shirts that we offer. I Heart Old School Wrestling, Bruiser Buddy, the Podcast Mask shirt, and of course, the official shirts for the Ontario Wildmen and the Ring a Ding Dong Dandy podcast. Visit ProWrestlingTees.com/TheDaveDynasty, order a shirt, and support the network. If you would also like to support, you can join our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/DaveDynasty. There you will get exclusive audio and video clips, early releases on podcasts, and much, much more. And if you would just like to make one-time contributions to support us, you can go to paypal.me/TheDaveDynasty. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for listening. Continue to support independent wrestling podcasts.
Still being able to attract an audience, Whipper Watson was used as an attraction right away in the beginning of 1970 as a special guest referee once again, but this time for a huge match between Dory Funk Jr. and Baron von Raschke. In March of 1970, he lost to the Sheik once again, but this time by countout. The match between the Sheik versus Whipper Watson in 1970 would also be the top drawing match in Maple Leaf Gardens, with 17,000 people crowding into Maple Leaf Gardens. This would be the last time in Whipper's career that he could actually say and claim the top drawing spot in Maple Leaf Gardens. Well, 17,000 people, man.
So I just did a quick math, because I know what the average of the price of the tickets was back then. It's for some reason it's in my mind. $55,250 gross for one night. And the Sheik was taking, what, 5% of the gate?
10 grand probably he walked away with?
Yeah. 1970. This is 1970. I can't even relate to what people's pay was in 1970, let alone anything else. $55,000 in one night. That's crazy. Back in the day,
What do you think 55,000 back in 1970 is today?
I could look on my phone, but I don't want to take the time to do it.
Yeah.
It would probably be
100 grand?
way over 100 grand, probably closer to two. That was
Wow.
like 50 years ago, Jesse.
Yeah.
I started working in 76, 77, and I was making like $100 a week, $125 a week. So $55,000 in one night, 6 or 7 years beforehand was a lot.
Yeah. Not to mention, Whipper was bringing out being again an attraction as a referee. Imagine being a special guest referee for Dory Funk Jr. match.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Not even just having Baron von Raschke in there, the Baron in there.
The Dory Funk was my oldest memory of professional wrestling on TV has to do with Dory Funk, actually. When he was a National Wrestling Alliance champion, after he beat Gene Kiniski in '69, he, I don't know who he was facing here. It might have been the Sheik. My earliest memory is Lord Layton on the TV show saying, and now we have some film of this traveling NWA World's Heavyweight Champion coming to Toronto. And then they just start some film, and he would do a taped interview from wherever, St. Louis probably, right? And his Texas draw, I'm going to be coming to Toronto, and I'm going to be facing the Sheik, and National Wrestling Alliance, World's Heavyweight Champion. I travel the world, and just so cool, and it just stuck in my brain. It's my earliest memory.
Do you have any memories about the Baron?
He was pretty good for a while.
I have him on a cover of a wrestling magazine I have,
Yeah.
and I know that he was, I think, a 3-time WWA champion, world champion.
Many-time WWA champion. He got his big start in Montreal with wrestling as a tag team partner with Mad Dog Vachon.
Really?
He was a nobody, collegiate star, trained by Vern Gagne, and he was a nobody, and he got his gimmick there, and rest is history, as they say. He lasted a long time, and his famous words are, what is it? He used the claw, and that's all the people got to know, or something like that, right?
Is the claw?
Yeah, and he was a real German guy.
Oh, okay.
That was his actual real last name, Raschke.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
One name in 1970 that actually surprised me, Wes, that's tied with the whip in Toronto fans, is none other than legendary Dusty Rhodes. The first meeting was a 6-man tag in June where Watson teamed with Bulldog Brower and Haystacks Calhoun against Dusty Rhodes, Dick Murdoch, and Hartford Love. Watson and Dusty would cross paths once again in July, but this time Watson had Bulldog Brower and Lord Layton while opposing Dusty Rhodes, Dick Murdoch, and Hans Schmidt. On July 22nd, 1970, Watson and Bulldog Brower went to the Ingersoll, Ontario, to face against Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch. Dusty and Murdoch weren't the only tag team Whipper Watson had to constantly rival with in the 70s. With tag partner Haystacks Calhoun, they had what could be considered the top rival in Ontario of 1970 against Don Kent and Al Costello. I mean, Wes, you can't imagine seeing Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch. Did you ever see those guys?
No. So I remember going to when I was working out in London every day, and I was able to squeeze some time in to go to the library. So I started going to the libraries, researching all the clippings, which is the vast majority of the clippings that are on the Wildman page and the Ontario Wrestling Clippings, the past page. And one day I got to the Ingersoll Library. This is 12 years ago or something. I was like, oh my God, Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch wrestled in Ingersoll. It's a blip on the highway of going down to Detroit, right? And I remember Terry Dart telling me about it because he saw the match. He said he'd never seen two wilder guys, not for blood or not for gore or but just wild in the ring, Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch. And I think they destroyed something in the Ingersoll Arena and they postponed wrestling for a while.
Really, eh? Where is that, Ingersoll, Ontario? Like, whereabouts?
It's in between Woodstock and London.
Oh, okay. So
So it's about an hour and 20 minutes west of Toronto.
Okay, cool.
The Ingersoll was kind of famous for wrestling because they had their own ring. You know, the arena owned a ring,
Oh, okay.
so they could put wrestling on whenever they wanted. And
Perfect.
if you check on the Ontario Wrestling Clippings page, Facebook page, type in Ingersoll, you get to see them all. They're all there. I did most of from like 1955 right up to 1980 something.
Wow, I'll have to check that out myself.
Quick word for, you mentioned Hartford Love.
Yes.
I spoke with his daughter on the weekend, I think, and he's not doing too well in a hospital in Newfoundland, and she was asking for best wishes, but it was inevitable that there was probably going to be a sad time for that family. So that's Hartford Love, Wes, which is weird. His name's Wes, and they had a son named Wes. And then there's me.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, best wishes to him then. I wish the family the best, and I know that's a rough time going through that kind of stuff.
yeah, he was as Hartford Love. They were fantastic. What heel?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about them in a sec. I want to know. Sorry to cut you off, but I want to know Don, Ken, and Al Costello before we get into the Hartford, because we're gonna get into them in just a sec.
I didn't flip the page yet.
No, it's okay.
Kent and Costello, the Fabulous Kangaroos, one version of the Fabulous Kangaroos, without a doubt, one of the top drawing tag teams of all time in whatever incantation they were. Al Costello wrestled like for about 1,500 years. Don Kent was remarkable as tag team partner. They wrestled against Whipper and Calhoun in every city across Ontario during those summer tours here.
Hans Schmidt was Canadian too, right?
Pardon me?
Sorry to skip, but Hans Schmidt was Canadian?
Hans Schmidt was French guy, French-Canadian, yeah.
Okay, and when you said a version of the Fabulous Kangaroos, now is this the Fabulous Kangaroos that I would know from Detroit, the famous one?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that you and I are on the same page.
So they did wrestle as Don Kent and Al Costello. They all wrestled as the Fabulous Kangaroos with George Cannon as their manager. I think we're going to get into that a little bit later. But yeah, they were the Fabulous Kangaroos ruled the tag, and Fabulous Kangaroos versus the Love Brothers would have been a great heel versus heel match to see. and they did wrestle.
It's important. I know that we just, and Hans Schmidt is obviously Canadian, German gimmick, super popular within the Ontario circuit. I think he worked for the Bearman for a bit too, no?
A bit, very little bit, yeah.
Yeah, very small. He was more of a Maple Leaf Wrestling guy, right? With Frank. In 1970, I want to point out to everybody listening right now, Whipper Watson only left Ontario once, and it was to Montreal to face Johnny Carr. Now, for people who aren't in Canada, driving to Montreal from Ontario is like, what, 8 hours, Wes?
5, yeah.
Yeah, 5, depending where you're coming from in Ontario.
Yeah.
So it's not even like he really left the province. It's not even that far.
And I don't know this for a fact, but Johnny Carr was wrestling here in Ontario at the time, and he was certainly not a star. He usually didn't even win on TV bouts, so I don't know why. I don't know why this took place, other than maybe Frank or Whipper was in the back sleeping and Johnny drove. That's the only thing I can think of.
In 1971, Watson would have 35 years in the professional wrestling business. 35 years. That's more than Undertaker, by the way, just so everybody knows. More than Shawn Michaels, Wes's favorite wrestler. Remaining in the tag ranks, once again, Whipper only found himself leaving Ontario once to Montreal. His feuds with tag partners continued with Don Kent and Al Costello, as well as other tag teams, the Skull Brothers and Hartford and Reginald Love. In May of 1971, in Kitchener, Ontario, was treated with a huge 6-man fence tag team match with 2 referees, 2 refs, 2 cages. Whipper Watson teamed with Haystacks Calhoun, and Tex McKenzie against Al Costello, Don Ken, and George Canyon. Now, we were just talking about them briefly.
Yep.
So, once again, I want to send out a heartfelt message to Hartford Love and, hope for the best. Do you think this tag team, the Hartford and Reginald Love, they work for the Bearman?
They did, yeah.
Are they a top draw for the Bearman?
Definitely. They were in the main events, yep. They also had their own promotion for quite a few years in the early 70s.
I said, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. What promotion?
It was mostly Reginald, but yeah, they trained a couple of our members of our pages, which is really cool.
That's actually pretty freaking sweet.
Yeah. So, we get a lot of wrestlers and wrestlers' families on our pages, which is really, really cool. So we get a lot of insight and a lot of personal stories from some of the guys and girls and sons and daughters of the wrestlers.
And personal family photos, too, they share, which is awesome.
Which is fantastic. That's right. Tex McKenzie, known as the world's biggest, what did Reggie call him? I can't remember. I think it's a swear word. Anyways, he was a great draw, fantastic draw. Wasn't much of a great wrestler, but he was a good bleeder, and he wrestled the Sheik a lot in main events everywhere too. Tex McKenzie. What did Reginald say? I met Reggie at one of the Titans dinners, and we were talking about Tex McKenzie, and he said it was the biggest imbecile that ever stepped in the ring or something like that, because he was so clumsy.
Oh, okay.
Threw a lot of potatoes around.
What the two referees in the fence tag match? Al Costello, Don Kent, and George Canyon. You said George Canyon was the manager, right?
Yeah.
Do you have anything on George Canyon you want to talk about?
Oh, he very famous Canadian. Was a promoter of Superstars of Wrestling for a long time.
Which is located from where?
It was in Windsor.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Montreal for a while. A bunch of our members also were in that promotion, which is really cool. There's a new Facebook page about Superstars of Wrestling, which is a great page. George Cannon hosted a TV show in Hollywood for a couple of years, like some kind of a game show.
Okay.
He was a manager of quite a few stars, promoter. Actually went up against Haystack Calhoun with Haystack as a heel in the 80s in Newfoundland. Yep.
Wow.
And he started out in Quebec and for Larry Kazabowski's promotion, Northlands. Cannon wrestled everywhere, and he was always a big, round guy. He just got rounder and rounder and rounder, and then before he passed, he lost a lot of weight. I don't know what happened, but everyone says that he was one of the greatest guys around. Nice guy. His personality on TV when he was doing the announcing and stuff like that was just like what he was like in real life. Wow. You actually have a letter signed by him, don't you?
Yeah. I don't know if I sent it to you or not because it was direct. Yeah, because it was directed to your buddy Terry. I just felt like you should have it because you're one of your best friends of 30 years. This part's pretty interesting here. We're going to just briefly talk about this. On September 5th, 1971, Frank Tunney ran in opposition to Dave McKegney, the Canadian Wildman, the Bearman, whatever you want to call him. We talked about this, you and I, last month on our Dave versus Frank episode, which is available free on YouTube and all other media platforms. I just want to quickly touch on this. It's funny that in 1966 he was working with Dave, and now in 71 he's working against Dave.
Yeah, it's wrestling business, right? When we're all fair weather friends, when everything's going smooth, hey buddy, oh yeah, and then when everything's going crap, it's like, fuck you, I hate your guts, you're a piece of shit.
Whipper Watson on that night teamed with Bobo Brazil to defeat Hans Schmidt and Tim Brooks. And in late 1971, November 28th, 1971 to be exact, Whipper Watson teamed with Bulldog Brower to defeat Diego the Sundowner. Sundowner?
Oh man, you got that one. It's Dingo the Sundowner.
Sundowner?
Yep.
Oh, I mistyped it. I put an A on my thing. Ha! What a dummy. And Man Mountain Canyon in less than 5 minutes. It's very important to know that November 28th, 1971, this tag match with Bulldog Brower would be the last match Whipper Watson would ever have in Maple Leaf Gardens.
Yep.
Because on November 30th, Whipper Watson was struck by a drunk driver while he was standing outside his car. This accident would end the in-ring career of the legendary Canadian wrestler Whipper Watson.
Yeah, it's now I heard that it was a drunk driver, and I heard that it was a car that went out of control. It doesn't really matter. It
was in the winter, and winter roads are not easy to drive on in Canada.
Whipper was putting something in the trunk of his car, and it was probably, I don't remember specifically at the time, but I remember the newspaper obviously was in the newspaper every day, right? Because
of course,
Toronto's Canadian wrestling hero was, in the hospital in serious condition, and medical procedures being what they were 50 years ago, they were a little bit different. But he persevered, and
he had to use a cane. He had to use a cane the rest of his life.
Yeah. One of the things that I think we just briefly talked about last week was one of Whipper's favorite holds, and he used the Canuck Commando hold, and he also used a hold called the Canadian Avalanche. And Jesse, just to surprise you, that's the secret word for the contest tonight, Canadian Avalanche. So if you hear this and you're paying attention, that's a secret word. We want all the people to email us their addresses and answer to the question, and we will pick winners. We've got 3 prizes or 4 prizes or maybe 5 prizes even. I'm organizing that right now, and we're going to be sending them out free to winners of the contest. So that's really cool. I'm so happy to be doing a contest, and it's celebrating our 5th anniversary of the Canadian Wildmen page, which comes up next month.
Wes, you want to give them the email one more time?
Sure. It's Wes.
Wes and Jesse Wildman1 at hotmail.com.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, for the contest, you have to email Wes and Jesse Wildman1 at hotmail.com. Special code word Canadian Avalanche.
Yeah, we just can't take it on our Facebook pages.
No. It has to be pure email. We're not even switching our Twitter. Anyways, so he ended up at St. Mike's Hospital. He had the surgery. He ended up using a cane for the rest of his life. This accident, though, wouldn't end his life. It would actually change his life by taking his in-ring career away and giving him a whole new life mission. After almost losing a leg, Watson dedicated his life to charity and the need of disabled children. Working with the Easter Seals, he is responsible for 150,000 children to join a safety club. In 1974, Whipper Watson's Snow-O-Rama for Timmy raised money for a construction of a therapeutic pool. In 1975, Whipper Watson started the Snow-O-Rama. The first year of Snow-O-Rama, 12 communities participated and raised $130,000, and since then over $16 million to help raise money for crippled children. Watson, as director of the Easter Seals campaign, would help fundraise and was an active member for the following charities for children: cystic fibrosis. Oh my God! Do you want to try to name these ones?
Cystic fibrosis.
Yep.
The Hugh McMillan Center for Crippled Children, multiple sclerosis, the Rumbold Center for the Deaf, and the Canadian Paraplegic Association. And you can't say that without saying the famous cliche, when one door closes, another door opens.
Yeah.
you said it. You said it last episode that people knew him for his politics and his wrestling. And if you didn't know him about those two things, you knew him because of he was in the news all the time for this stuff, continually working hard. It's like a person who had a crippled child and wanted to help everyone's crippled children. This guy worked tirelessly for doing this, and without, I mean, he probably did appearances and stuff like that, but it wasn't like he was doing it for the money. He was doing it because he cared. He had a heart, right?
Yeah. He was the director of the Ontario Society of Crippled Children for 37 years.
Wow.
Right? He was a huge figure in the Easter Seals. He had an annual bottle drive. He's just and in Canada, and he is known for his humanitarian side.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you don't know him for his wrestling or politics, and you just caught up, maybe you joined the safety club. You know what I mean? He's well known for his politics, and he's well known for all that and acknowledged for that. And we're going to get into that in just a second here. On December 17th, 1978, Frank Tunney held Whipper Watson Appreciation Night at Maple Leaf Gardens to recognize him for his work with charity, as well as everything he did for Toronto wrestling. $1 of every ticket went to the Timmy Scholarship Fund. That night, a young French wrestler named Dino Bravo faced against Whipper's biggest rival of his career, Gene Kiniski, for the new Canadian heavyweight title. And when Dino Bravo won the championship, the legendary Whipper Billy Watson presented the young French wrestler with the title. What a moment!
Yeah, it was a big deal here. They had lost. The Sheik was dying here or dead. They had basically nothing going on at Maple Leaf Gardens other than shows every 2 weeks. The AW had come in for a while, tried. The Mid-Atlantic was just sort of coming in at the time. They were starting, which would change and revolutionize the Maple Leaf Gardens wrestling until, of course, the takeover by Junior. But the card at the Gardens was publicized on all the newspapers and all the TV shows, the news shows, I should say, and I put out a bulletin called Toronto Wrestling History in the early 80s, and I found some pictures. One of the pictures was from the newspaper. One of the pictures was from a magazine of Whipper and Kiniski arguing at ringside. One was from probably the 40s or not the 50s or the 50s or the early 60s, and one was from this night where Gene had to mouth off and poke his finger at Whipper's chest. Of course, Bravo won the title that night, beating Kiniski. Great time for wrestling history in Toronto because Bravo was a Canadian guy. He's a fantastic wrestler before he got all bulked up and muscled up like in the WWF. And he was they must have taken a lot of thought in putting the belt on him. And unfortunately, the business the way it is, he messed them over. He took off. He went to the AWA, was working as a Canadian heavyweight champion there. And I don't know if Bravo was trying to pull one over because he also wrestled in the Montreal territory, which he partly owned, and Ottawa, and being billed as the Canadian heavyweight champion also. And Frank put out a notice in the newspapers that because of his injuries, Dino Bravo won't be able to fulfill his title reigns and his championship belts, and there's going to be the new big tournament, which turned out to be Dewey's big night when he won the Canadian Heavyweight Championship belt.
Yeah, there's a whole book on the Canadian heavyweight title by Andrew Calvert. It's fantastic. I've read it. What's important too about this night? I want to ask. 1978, like you were into the sheets and clippings and all that. So it was like, what were the quote unquote smart fans trying to say about this? You know what I mean? Because the smart fans who had the sheets knew Dino Bravo was traveling, right? And for Whipper Watson to be there, you always told me that in Maple Leaf Gardens, if Sam Muchnick was there, you knew a title change was happening.
Yep.
Do you think in the sense it's almost the same for Whipper Watson when he's in attendance, something big's going to happen, or?
I think it was announced prior that the belt would be presented by Whipper Watson. So it was known that that was going to happen. I don't really know exactly what happened, and I know it goes into a bit of detail with in AC's book about the Canadian Heavyweight Championship belt. But
Mm-hmm.
still, someone got messed over. Someone did, and I love Bravo. I thought he was great. I really enjoyed Dino Bravo. Whether he was, I remember seeing him in the early '70s when he was still very acrobatic and did define drop kicks and stuff like that. Right, and he was a young guy. He's a great Canadian star, a fantastic Canadian star. I don't really know what happened behind the scenes. I'm sure something did, but
Oh, wait till you watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode about him.
well, we've all read about his underworld misgivings and sad story. But can you
Yep.
imagine getting blown away? Like, Jesus.
No, I can't actually.
Sitting in your chair in your house and you're messing the underworld over for cigarettes.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. Oh
Under.
my God.
Anyways, yeah.
Uh, in 1974, Whipper Watson received the Order of Canada, and in 1987, he would receive the Order of Ontario. Watson continued gaining more weight, getting up to 320 pounds, and then on February 4th, 1990, Whipper Billy Watson had a heart attack in Florida and passed away. Whipper Billy Watson was inducted into the Calgary Stampede Hall of Fame in 1995, the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame in 1995, the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame in 1996, the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2015, and in Ontario, Whipper Watson Park is in Newmarket, Ontario, and there's also a school named after him, and it's called W.J. Watson Public School, and that's in Keswick, Ontario. Wes, that pretty much sums up the career of Whipper Watson. It's kind of a shame, obviously, the end of the road, right? But it's hard to deny the fact that Whipper Watson, without him, there would be no wrestling in Toronto, I think.
I agree, 100%. As much as we delved into Frank doing what he did from his predecessors, there would be no Frank either. There probably would have been the Gardens because that was a hockey building that was built by Conn Smythe, and it's a hockey building, but the two went hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And and we talked about this before, the Maple Leaf Gardens and Frank Tunney, right from the start, basically, right when it was built in '31. And
Yeah.
you go, if you're just going to take away their gardens and put Frank Tunney with someone, you're going to put Frank Tunney without a doubt, Whipper Watson. I can't even imagine the friendship that those guys must have had, knowing each other for all those years and all the money that they made off of each other. Not that money's everything, but you still need money to exist. And Whipper being the charity guy that he did, you can't do that when you're collecting Pogie. So, Whipper had a few businesses on the side over the years, so that probably helped him.
Not to mention he had stake in territories in the States like St. Louis, which is the home territory of the NWA.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And he had stake in it when Tom Pax had it before San Martin.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think Toronto wrestling would be without Whipper Watson?
I think it would have been someone else. Probably not anywhere near as big, as popular, as known province-wide. I mean, even if you Google and put in WHIPPER, Whipper Watson comes up like in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's like crazy. It's like he was so popular. It was such a long career. I'm so happy that we were able to delve into his career and do this today and last week. I can't believe that we even tackled it. I can't. I'm so proud of your research that you did and the way you put it together. It's been so much fun doing this, and we got to pick some more people where we do that deep dive.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you look at the first boat trip to 1936 to the Europe, and then all through World War II, he was wrestling in Toronto, and he
Yep.
was one of the top draws in the 50s. His rival with Gorgeous George, the famous non-title switch with Gorgeous George that we talked about in part one.
Yep.
You mean the rival with Kaniski, the rival with Najo Singh. So let's just break this down just in your opinion again. So what match in the 70s, I know there's only 2 years in the 70s, would you want to see? I'm not going to lie. It's right off the bat, 17,000 people, Whipper versus a Sheik. I want to be there.
I think that that would be probably one of mine too, but I'm going to go with probably Whipper and a partner. Could be Haystack or could be Brower against the Kangaroos. Yeah, just to see the Kangaroos in their prime.
I would love to see Whip and Bulldog versus Dusty and Dick Murdoch. That would have been sick too.
That would have been crazy.
I never got to see Dusty, so
I liked Dusty's ring persona. He was very exciting. One of the first matches I saw at Maple Leaf Gardens, Dusty was on the card, and he was exciting, no doubt about it. I think it was Ken Patera versus Dusty. I think.
Oh wow,
pretty weird.
Oh, do you want to say anything else about Whip and what he meant to Ontario or anything before we start wrapping things up here?
No, I think we've said just about everything we can. Other than we can't put it into really. We've looked at the facts. We've looked at the figures. We've done the research on things that we were hoping that people are interested in, but we can't. I can't emphasize anyways enough that this time period was so long ago that it seems foreign, sort of, to a certain extent, of trying to explain to a fan who's, say, half your age that might be listening or younger than you on these facts and figures about these people that they'll never ever see other than clips and snippets on YouTube or whatever, right? This kind of career and this kind of a person and this kind of a man needs this kind of education for the people. He needs to be. I'm so happy to do this. We're trying to keep the history of wrestling alive, and if we have to go back to 1936, then goddamn, we're doing it, and we're going to do it the best we can. We really are. And like I said,
try to be as accurate as we can, at least.
You're doing yeoman's work. You're doing fantastic work on the research on these 2 episodes, Jesse. I really enjoyed working with you on this one. This was special. This really was.
Yeah, it's been really fun looking into things and talking to people and doing the research. We worked really hard on this because we knew it was going to be a 2-parter, even coming into this.
Yep.
I think Whipper Watson should one day be on the Toronto Walk of Fame. I know Bret Hart was announced today as we're recording October 7th. The episode's going to be released on October 10th, which is 81 years ago, his second week at the Maple Leaf Gardens. So once again, we're trying to stay as historical as we can with each episode release. If you want to talk Whipper Watson or have any questions, again, we have 2 Facebook groups, Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, the Wildmen Tribute page. We have our Twitter at Wildmen Podcast. We have our email, Wes and Jesse, wildman1 at hotmail.com. Send us in matches that you want us to watch, subjects that you want us to cover. We take this pretty serious, and we love doing this. And next month we have something pretty interesting, don't we, buddy?
It's going to be something different for us. We're going to have a guest, and
yes,
we don't want to say anything yet, but it's going to be really strange, only because it's not just going to be you and I. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully we can keep this rolling and have more guests, because guys, I know guys. We could get a whole pile of people on here to talk, and whether we fill a few people into one show or we do one show on one person remains to be seen. But yeah, if you guys have any questions you want to ask us or anything you want, just let us know. At the information that Jesse just gave you, it's so exciting. We have our ideas on our shows for the next year practically, but we're willing to change it up so that we keep the fans happy and educated and keep the history flowing.
Not only that, too, you've seen a lot of things, too, and studied Ontario wrestling history and wrestling history for the past, 30 years, right? So,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not like I don't know everything, and I don't plan to know everything. I don't ever want to know anything. I just have a glimpse of a lot of things from my time frame, and it's just so exciting, excuse me, to impart what I remember or what I don't remember on, and how I lose my train of thought on so many things. We're not perfect. We're just two fans having fun. And like I
yeah,
said earlier, we're not guys that were wrestling. We weren't famous. We're not using a famous name to push our podcast. It's just two fans that are doing something that they love. And this is the fifth episode or sixth?
yeah, our fifth episode.
Our fifth episode, and we've only known each other for less than a year, and I think we've got fantastic chemistry. I love doing this with you. It's so cool.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty damn fun. I'm having a great time doing it. Just so everybody knows, our T-shirts are available on PROWRESTLINGTEES.com. Just type in the search bar Ontario Wildmen, and you'll find our T-shirt that's available. Once again, the contest hint was released. We're not going to say the keyword again, but if you know the keyword and want to have a shot at the prize, it's Wes and Jesse Wildman1@hotmail.com. As Wes said, we're going to do a special guest next month. We're going to keep it just at that. We're going to release hopefully some information on who the special guest is going to be in the next couple weeks.
Yep.
If you didn't get a chance to check out part 1, well, I don't know why you skipped to part 2, but we appreciate it. But part 1 is available on YouTube. All of our episodes are available free on YouTube and all other media platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Heart Radio. We are absolutely everywhere, especially here on the Dave Dynasty Network next month when we do our special guest episode. For now, I'm Jess.
I'm Wes.
And we are the Ontario Wildmen.
That's us.
It up. That's us. Yep. Look at that. You forgot another line.
No. It wasn't me. It was somebody else.
Oh, yeah. See you next month, everybody. Yeah. See you next month, guys.
All right. See you. Thanks.